Thank you, Pastor Aaron. I really appreciate letting me come. Let me sing. Letting my family be here and be part of your conference and part of your church. I'm sure your church appreciates you, Pastor Aaron, but I really think, I've been all over. I've been in every state I haven't done Alaska and Hawaii, because who wants to fly in a plane or ride in a boat? Boats are boring. But, I've been all over the country. I've been in churches all over the country. I sang for the school back when I was in college, and I traveled everywhere, and I've been in a lot of churches, and I've met a lot of pastors, and it's easy to, when you see them day after day, not recognize the blessing that you have. I don't see a lot of piano players that play fervently the way Mrs. Mudge does. I don't see pastors. I do see pastors that care, but you don't see pastors that put into it what your pastor puts into it, and the care that your pastor has for you guys, and the excellence with which it's executed. You just don't. It's not a regular thing. You guys have something really special here, and Pastor Aaron told me about the town for years. This is my first time being here. It's pretty exciting to see all the stuff in person. And yeah, I know there's a church on like every other street corner, but this one's special. Amen. And one of the reasons for that is Pastor Aaron Mudge. So I just want to lead off with just recognize that blessing there, and I'm honored to be able to speak here with you guys and with him, and it's something special. This church is something special, and I just want everybody to recognize that today. As we go into this conference week, the Northern Plains Conference is this week, and one of the reasons that you guys can host that and be part of that ministry is because you're pastor. And this church has the power, even in a town filled with churches. This church has a chance to make an influence and make an impact on this town. And through that, this state. And through this state, this country, the world, we can reach the whole world for God because of this church. And I challenge you to do it. And that's where we're going today with the PowerPoint here. If I'll click through. Don't be a civilian in the war of heaven. Because it is a war. It really is. Now, Pastor Aaron, here's the thing. If you do preach for Pastor Aaron, if you ever, don't tell him what you're preaching on, because then he'll steal all your verses for Sunday school. But yeah, we're talking today about the war in heaven. So this is his picture, which is really nice. For my PowerPoint, I want to be all tech and cool and like do all the advanced stuff. For our PowerPoint today, I tried AI art. Has anybody heard of AI art? It's kind of a new trend that's going on out there. So you pull up the website, or you can download them on your phone sometimes, and you just type in what you want. And instead of Google searching and finding the picture, it actually draws it for you. So all of the graphics, I think in this PowerPoint, all the graphics were drawn by the computer. There's one photo in there, I think. That's not. But everything else is drawn by the computer. So it comes up with some weird stuff, but it's interesting. So I thought, let's add some of that today just to keep it interesting. But what I did is to see what does the computer think this stuff would look like. So I put in, don't be a civilian in the war of heaven. And this is the picture that came back. So it's a little weird and unique. But if we're talking about this war in heaven, what are we talking about? Okay. Do we need to line up and grab our big swords and whatever other defensive tools we may have on us here today and go fight? I don't know if you guys watch the news or see what's going on in the world at all, but it makes me want to go grab a sword and go fight. And it makes me real mad to see some of the things that happen these days. But I don't think that's what it's talking about. And even if we did take up arms and take down our opposition, still I don't think that's necessarily a win. So, well, what is the win? What's the war? To win a war, you got to know what you're fighting. You got to know what you're fighting for. And who's the enemy? And what's the battle? Well, we're in luck because the Bible provides all of the answers for us. Let's look at it today. Now, Pastor Aaron, we already read through the passage, so I won't repeat that, but we can start with Ephesians chapter 12, which is really small, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. It's really small up there on the screen. I should have asked about the screen size before I made PowerPoints for you. Sorry about that, Pastor Aaron. But Ephesians 6, verse 12 says, "For we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." The Ephesians outlines the fight, okay? And you're in it whether you want to be or not. It's just, this is our fight, okay? You can either give up and die, or you can fight it. The title is "Don't be a civilian in the war of heaven," but there are no civilians in the war for heaven. Right. You can't be a civilian. The war is happening, and it's coming for you. And you either give up and die, or you fight. So how do we do that? What is our fight? Let's figure it out so we can be armed and ready. Now, Pastor Aaron in the Sunday school class talked about the whole armor of God, and that's, of course, how we're armed and fight. But let's look more at the war itself to start with here. So, our warfare, it's number one. It's not against flesh and blood. It's not a war of physical combat. As mad as I might get with some of the politics stuff I see out there, and boy, do I get pretty mad when I see it. We're not called to take up an army and form the Christian army of fighters against the left or whatever and go kill people. We're not called to take up arms against Antifa, for instance, and go march on Portland and raise the city. Even though every time I pull up Twitter, it kind of makes me want to do that. That's not what we're here about. That's not what God has for us. It's not the fight of the Christians, and it's not God's war. No, it's not against flesh and blood. It's against several other things. So the first one that it gives us is it's against principalities. Okay, so principalities, if you can think like medieval era, the king, and then there's like the princes and all those guys, and they all have their little fiefdoms that all report back to the king, right? So each one of these little groups, that's a principality. So it's not, Iowa versus South Dakota, which, by the way, I don't know. I don't know the populations, but just driving through, I think South Dakota would win. I don't know. This place seemed cooler. Ask me later, I can give you the details. But it's not Iowa versus South Dakota. It's not South Dakota versus, Oregon or Washington, D.C. That's not really the war that we're having here. But it is a war of politics in the sense is, will God's way be the law? Now, we have separation of church and state in this country. May God be praised. But there's still, inside that, there's a sense in which we need to advocate for, in our culture, God's ways. Okay? So, is this town, and let me be clear, all right? We can get caught up in the politics of our nation and who's going to be president and all that, and I think that's an important thing to work for, because we're part of this nation. I wouldn't care as much if I was in Britain who the president of the United States was. But I would say, and I think everyone can take this to heart, that the 14,000 people in Huron, South Dakota are much more important than anything that goes on in Washington, D.C. And when you're fighting against principalities, the ones in this local town matter a lot more. Having won the God's way and the right way of living in this town matters a lot more to those of us in this room who live here than anything that happens in Washington, D.C., to be fair. But it is important, and I don't think we can just toss it out. There is a war against principalities, and that is who's going to be, or what's the law going to be like? What's the status of our country? Okay, it's against powers. Okay, this is a war of influence. Okay, will God's way be the culture? Now, I have to say, so far what I've seen in this town is very, very cool. It's way nicer than my town as far as the culture of God's way. Not that Michigan is like a godless cesspool, Aaron, but also, Saginaw, where my church is at, is fighting for Flint with the murder capital of the country. So, I looked up your crime statistics before coming here. I think the last murder was in 2007, unless I'm bad at Google. And that one ended real fast. It wasn't like a crime spree. Like he just got caught right away. So I'm going to get lost in the sauce here on these ideas I rabbit trail on. But we're talking about a war of influence. What influence are we going to have on the people in our town and the people of the world? Are we going to influence people towards God's way in our culture? Is our culture going to be one that honors God and follows Him? Or are we going to have something against God? Hey, that's a fight, right? Anybody been on Twitter lately? Any Twitter people in here? I do Twitter because I can't stand watching the news anymore. So because all they do is just report on what's on Twitter. So I just go right to the source. Yep. I think it's a thing that we all have, not necessarily just online, because I know not everybody's going to be the tech person who goes on the internet. Obviously, that's what I do with Finding the Point. But there's a stronger play to be made for influencing the people you see day to day. I work with, in my center, where I'm the supervising clinician and I do my job, there's probably about 25, varies 25 to 30, usually around 20 to 25-year-old graduates from our local college there, Central Michigan University. And as important as our work on Finding the Point is, I have a lot more influence in the war of heaven with those people that I see at work every day. And I can't always just be like dropping Bible verses and pushing the faith hard and like preaching at my coworkers, because they are paying me to do a job. I've got to do my job. But the influence I have on those people there at work, that's really important. That's not something to give up. That's my battlefield. What's your battlefield? Who are you seeing every day? Who are you influencing? And are you influencing them for God's way and what is the right thing? That's your fight. That's the war against powers. It's a war of influence. Will your culture be one that follows after God? It's also going to be against the rulers of the darkness of this world. So this is a war of thought leaders. Will God's people teach His way? So who's leading your thought? What's your philosophy that you're going to follow? And it's easy to just kind of sit there and let come what may and just deal with life as it comes. But the fight that we're having is against an opponent that has a well thought out philosophy, and they know what they're on about, and they know what they're pushing. And at the core, it's Satan trying to push the destruction of everything and man and right and good and justice. But if you just take our personal world that we're in right now and the fight we have against the world right now today, they know what they're on about. I can pull those 21-year-old kids who just come fresh out of Central Michigan University with a degree in, gender studies. Actually, I have somebody who has a gender studies. She's a nice person. But she did just come straight out of a state school with a degree in gender studies. And I can see that girl, and she can go and teach what she believes. And she can leave the thought on that because she's got a philosophy that backs it up, and she knows it, and she's learned it, and she can preach it. And if I don't have something to combat against that, if I don't have a coherent opposition to that based on God's word teaching God's way, I'm not going to win. So there's not just influence, there's also what you're influencing towards. You got to have a plan. You got to have the thought that you're going to lead others to when you influence them. And if you're real good, Pastor Aaron, you also influence the girl who's a gender studies degree. And hopefully she doesn't find this and watch it and get really mad at me. But also I'm her boss, so, I win. But what's the philosophy? Do you know it? Do you actually know what you believe? That's a good question. This isn't in the PowerPoint. But do you know what you believe? Do you know it well enough to argue it with somebody who doesn't? Can you go up to some random person in Walmart over here and be like, hey, Here's what, not that you would do it in Walmart because it'll be weird and nobody's going to listen to you. I get it, Pastor. And I'm not saying like Walmart evangelism on Thursdays or anything. But let's just take the person. Let's just take the person. Some random person you meet in this town. Are you able to articulate what you believe and why and prove it? Can you have that? Can you fight that way? If you don't have that, if you're not ready to fight with that, you're not ready to fight. You don't have all that armor on. You don't have your sword. You're not ready for that fight. Now, the good news is, you guys have a really good pastor, and he's working to prepare you guys for that fight. And when you get that, you can go out into this town, even with, 47 churches? Or how many? Yeah, 47 churches. And you can win people to God's way and win that war of influence. And you can do it because it's right and it's God's way. So, all right. Spiritual wickedness in high places. This one's tougher because, in our modern world with everything so distant, the high places are really far away. But spiritual wickedness in high places, I like to think of that as war of accountability. Will we accept the rule of evil men? And I'm not talking rebellion. I'm not ready to lead everyone into the Capitol on whatever day that happens. That's not really what I'm calling for, because I'm not really making political statements at this point. But are we going to work towards a society that says, well, they did something terrible, but they're on our side, so I guess that's okay? Or are we going to work towards a society that does keep people accountable? And I'm not going to go too deep into this one because I don't want to get political and go that direction. I don't think that's the right focus for this morning. But it is part of our warfare. Are we going to have a society that holds leadership accountable and fights against spiritual wickedness with, places like these international groups getting together? And I'm going to stop because I don't want to get too political on it. But you know what I'm talking about. Can we hold our world accountable and build a culture and build a world that's going to keep spiritual wickedness out of high places and fight against that and not let it happen? Okay, so that's our warfare. That's what it is. So the call. Let's look at Ephesians 5:14. Ephesians 5, verse 14. I put in, we must be active agents for God's purpose, and got this secret agent sort of tile thing. I thought that was cute. A little weird. I don't know. All the AI art turned out a little weird to me, but it's kind of cool. Ephesians 5:14 says, "Wherefore he saith, awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil." So here's the thing. You might think, all right, 14,000 people in here on South Dakota, 47 churches. We've got, I didn't count everybody in the audience today, but it's not like a mega church situation here with thousands of people just doing the wave as Benny Hinn comes walking down the aisle to "How Great Thou Art." Yeah. There's videos of that. Thankfully, that's not. I mean, I wouldn't mind if you had 4,000 people in the church today, Aaron, but it'd be hard to find a seat. All right, that's not our deal here. But think about this: if we're going to influence the world, if we're going to fight, and we're going to win, because I'm not willing to just fight and die. I want to win. I think we can, and I think we should try. Even if we do die, fighting to win is a better way to fight. So let's win. All right. But if you're going to do that, do you guys think that the people who change the world for God and God's way, do you think they're going to come from Portland? You think it's going to be over there in California? Think Washington, D.C.'s got the next great thought leaders that are going to advocate for what's right? I don't think so. I mean, maybe. Who knows? There's good people everywhere. I think it's places like this. Places where people have a good pastor who've taught them what's right and people who follow God's word and God's way. It's places like Huron, South Dakota, where the next great revival that changes the nation's heart after God can start. It can start right here with us, if we choose to be active agents for God's purpose. That enables God to bless our efforts and to take it beyond what we could possibly imagine. Maybe he won't. That's possible. But also maybe he will. And it's worth the fight. It's worth the fight. Let's take it up. So, first, stop playing dead and wake up. Now, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. Pastor Aaron doesn't tell me anything about anybody doing anything. So maybe you guys are all really on fire and you're like, yeah, we know. But also, it's real easy to just show up to a service on Sunday and sit in a pew. It's real easy to just kind of be friends with people and treat church like it's a social group, which, it fills that role in society. And a good church will help meet your social needs, so that's a good thing. But it's easy to just lay there and play dead. It's easy to think, well, those fights are other people's fights. I'm just going to do my own thing. I'm going to sit over here and I'll be me. That's not what we're called to do. Every person individually is responsible. Alice, even you who can sit up straight and put your bottom on the pew and keep your hands down, right? Go ahead and do that right now. Yeah, look at that. Very good. Yeah, even Alice can take up the fight. And let's be clear, there's people I'm going to encounter and people I'm going to deal with that you'll never meet. But you also have people that I'll never meet. So if you trust me to do all of it, if you trust Pastor Aaron to do all of it, he's only going to reach so many people. He only can. You can reach people he'll never meet. We all have to wake up. We all have to be active agents for God's purpose. It's like James Bond, man. I wanted to be a spy when I was a kid, right? And then I found out what spies actually do, and I was like, not so much. But in a way, we're agents for God's purposes, and that's a good thing to do. So, going back to my PowerPoint a little bit, Christ is going to show you your battlefield. Yours is going to be different than mine, different than Pastor Aaron's, different than Mrs. Mudge, different than Alice. Her battlefield is different. But look for your battlefield. And Christ gives you that light to shine, and you can go fight there. Now, tactically, be clever about it. All right? I mean, once again, Aaron, I hope no one from work ever finds your channel and gets me busted for it. So if so, clip this out, please. But where I work, I really can't be running around quoting Bible verses and telling people they need to get saved. If my company knew I was here today, if they knew what I was going to teach at this conference this week, they'd probably fire me. Okay? Because that's the world we live in. And the people who run my company are very woke, and if they knew that I was going to say the stuff I have planned to say this week, they'd be like, well, we can't have him running a center for us. So I got to be clever about it. Fools are destroyed. All right, so be clever. Be smart about how you do it. Be a secret agent if you have to. Be an open, active agent if you have to. Be smart. All right? Don't waste your time. There's not a lot of time left. Do what you can do with the battlefield that you have, because we all have a different battlefield. So pick yours and fight it. And fight smart and fight good. And if you're not sure how to fight smart and fight good, I know there's a great church in the area where you can go and the pastor's teaching that. Oh, hey, Pastor Aaron. All right. Let's learn to fight. 2 Timothy 2, 1 through 4. Let's read that real quick. 2 Timothy 2, verses 1 through 4. Learn to fight. 2 Timothy 2, 1 through 4 says, "Thou therefore, my son, be strong in the grace that is in Jesus Christ. And the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men, who shall be able to teach others also. Thou therefore endure hardness, as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. No man that warreth entangleth himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who hath chosen him to be a soldier. So, we need to learn how to fight. Winning requires learning, practice, and effort. So when I say, Pastor Aaron, that I don't want to just fight. Alice, put your hands down and stop waving them around in the air. That's much better, thank you. All right. So Pastor Aaron, when I say I want everybody to not just fight, but I want everyone to win, this is what I'm talking about. Because I know it's going to be hard for us to win all the battles and always have victories. But you don't have a chance if you're not doing it right. It requires learning and practice and effort. Okay? Pastor Aaron can't come up here Sunday after Sunday preaching messages out of God's Word if he hasn't spent time learning what God's Word says. And you can't go into where you work, you can't go into your friends and your place if you don't know what God's Word says, and if you don't know how to share that with other people in a way that they're going to understand and be able to accept it and grow from it. If you don't know how to influence other people, you're not going to influence other people. And it's something you need to know how to do, because you can't be a civilian in the war of heaven. You got to fight. So you got to learn how. God's Word shows the way to win, but if you don't know what God's Word says, you're going to fail. And I don't think we should fight to lose. I'm not in it for the Pyrrhic victories. I'm in it to win. Beyond the truth, you also need to hone your gifts so that your ministry can be effective. If you're interested in spiritual gifts, I'm not preaching on that today. See Pastor Aaron about that. There's also a fantastic set of verses in Corinthians 12 that go into great detail on it. Strongly recommend. Feel free to read it after the service today. But you all have spiritual gifts and advantages that you can bring to the table, things that you have to fight for God in God's way that are yours. And we're all part of the body fighting this fight. Hone them. Improve your skill. Learn what you can do. Maybe you're like me and you talk too much and you're loud and you like being on camera. And then you call your old college friend and you set up a program to teach God's way to everybody on the internet. That might have been my way, and maybe it's not yours. Fair enough. But something is. All right, you have your own talents and gifts and abilities, and you can use them effectively. I don't know what that is. You're going to have to figure it out. It's your responsibility. But you can do it, and you can improve those skills and learn to fight. And that's the challenge. When you learn to fight, then you make a difference. Then you can win. The verse here also talks about endure hardness. It's not going to be easy. Okay? It's not easy. And there's times... Once again, maybe we should really clip this episode, Pastor Aaron, because I'm going to say a lot of stuff to get me in trouble if people at work find it. But I've been having my fight for a long time. I've been reported for racism. You think I did anything racist? No, not at all. I just made somebody mad because I was advocating for the right way, and they didn't like it. So they reported me for something I didn't even do. That's hard. That's not a good feeling, folks. It's not a good feeling when they counterattack and they try to destroy you. But we can endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. We can let go of those things that aren't important. And what's not important? Almost everything, really. What's important is the eternal things. So let go of the temporal things. Focus on the eternal. Look to please God. That's what's important. You can endure the suffering of this life for now and find victory in the future with God and God's way. Strongly recommend. All right, plan for action. Watch ye, stand fast in the faith, quit you like men, be strong. So, be on the lookout for those opportunities to share God's word. Have a plan for how you're going to respond when those attacks come your way. And when the opportunity for you to influence comes your way, be ready. Have that plan of attack ready to go. Practice your skills so you're able to fight. Be strong in the faith and in spiritual combat. Be ready to go. And then win. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to read all of this Thessalonians passage. But we have a big victory coming. Christ is returning. He's returning soon. I used to think, probably not in my lifetime. It's been 2,000 plus years. I'm probably a good bet that it's not this time soon. But as I see so much more of the world falling apart and everything's getting worse and worse continually, and the prophecies of Christ's return never seem sooner to me. They really do. It could be any time. And we're going to win. That fight's coming. In the end, we win. So I did have one last bit up there for AI art to show, but before I do go to that, everybody's got to check your own heart. You got to check your own life. Okay, I'm not judging anybody here. I don't know most of you. I mean, we've chatted on YouTube chat for a few minutes, a few times with some of you. But you know what you're facing, and you know what your opportunities are, and you know what your skills are. And, well, maybe you don't. Maybe you are just a civilian in your own life. But my guess is that you know who you are and you know what you can do. So let this be your call to action. If you're already active, good, keep fighting. But if you're trying to live that civilian life, it's not going to work. You're going to get crushed. You're going to be useless and have no purpose. And then that's it. I think it's better to fight. And I think it's better to win. And we can win. And in the end, Christ returns and we do win. That's the challenge today. Let's do it. Let's live it. Let's fight for Christ. Let's win this town. Let's win this state. Let's win this country. And let's win this world. So let it be. All right, one last piece of AI art for fun. I basically pulled the titles for the slides for all these pictures. So like plan for action. Or no, I put the Corinthians verse. That's what it gave me. This one was learn to fight. This was agents. Okay, so the last thing I typed in there was Pastor Aaron Mudge, Calvary Baptist here in South Dakota. And that's what it gave me for it. It actually did a really good job. I was surprised at how close it got to the real thing. So yeah, if you want to try that out, the website is Wombo Art or Wombo.art that I use. It's kind of fun. To be fair, a lot of them are these nightmare fuel horror images that come out because the AI can't tell what looks good or not. But yeah, there's some good art there. Okay, anyways, we got this, guys. Go fight, win. Let's win it. Let's win it for God. We can make a difference. Pastor Aaron, thank you.